Roseanne, I presume you can hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Hello? Hello?
This is Rich.
Oh, hey, Rich. I just wanted to know, what time did the call start?
Oh, hi,
6:30?
Miss Green. I didn't recognize the voice initially, but yes, we can hear you.
Okay. I'm late.
Actually, you're not.
Oh, I'm not. Great.
Thanks.
Hi, everybody.
Good evening, everyone.
How are you?
Hello, everybody.
How are you?
I'm grateful. And yourself?
I am blessed.
Hey.
Good evening, everyone. I think we are live on YouTube as well. Great.
Okay. I guess we could get started. Who all do we have?
We don't, oh, as soon as Councilwoman Hunt signs on, then we'll have a quorum. It's me, you,
I'm on.
Councilwoman Hunt, and Councilwoman Green. We are missing Councilperson Graves, Councilman Simpson, and Councilman Folks. Looks like from my screen. I don't know. Maybe somebody else can double check that.
Everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Oh, good.
Do
I'm
we
looking at
have,
the pictures and the participant names on the side. So I think we're missing 3 people.
do we have it set up for hand raising, Mr. Logan?
Yes, if you go down to your, where it says participants,
Mm-hmm.
and the lower right side of the participants list, there is a icon that says raise hand. I just raised mine.
I did mine.
I don't see it.
Mm.
Mine just shows the list of who's here.
We'll go all the way down to the bottom, Linda. Do you have a
I
pen
have it.
to?
I have it.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Oh, you're welcome.
Okay, I see Mrs. Hunt's here. Okay, we could get started. I know Mr. Simpson's gonna be late getting on, but we could go ahead and get started. And I just want to first of all say hello and welcome to everyone that may be viewing. Thanks for watching. Thanks for being interested and wanting to be involved. This is our second budget meeting. It's over at 8:30. So by 8:15, we'll start winding down to have a hard stop at 8:30. This is for public viewing only. There are no public comments. However, you're welcome to take notes because there will be a time for public comment. With that being said, I will turn it over now to our city manager, Mr. Logan.
Good evening. Once again, thank you for attending tonight's budget meeting. This is our second meeting, and we are very excited moving forward. Last week, we had shared with our city local residents that looks like our 2021 budget will be a balanced budget. And I'm going to turn it over to our finance director, Mr. Rich Chapman, at this time.
Good evening to everyone. Thank you. And with that, we will generally jump in with one sentence of a summary, and that is we covered the revenues from 2021 last time. We covered the basics beginning of expenses for 2021 out of the general fund, and we covered one department or the bulk of one department initially. So we will pick up on page 6 in tab 3, which would be for labeled as council. And the general format will be an opening comment from myself, a summary of the department, a profile, if you will, a few comments possibly on staffing if it's relevant, any key changes from last year that we're anticipating, and then it will be opened up for questions, and Mr. Logan will be the facilitator for that. So with that, we'll start with council, which is Department 400. The profile, this department reflects costs related directly to the elected council and a few citywide expenses. Elected officials receive a small stipend, but no benefits or pension. Expenses related to city-sponsored events celebrated throughout the year, such as Unity Day, Jazz Festival Fridays, and Christmas Parade, as well as subscriptions such as Pennsylvania Municipal League, are included. The note here is the costs related to the Grand Prix are not charged here. They are captured in a separate fund that tracks that event. There are 7 elected officials comprised or included in this department. One can see that from the changes from 2020 projection to 2021. There's basically 2 small changes, and one of them is essentially getting back to 2019 expenditure levels for the events that were canceled. So that creates a perceived increase, but it's really getting back to almost a status quo. And then the items I mentioned for the overtime internally are being charged to the different hosting departments. So with that, I will stop and entertain questions.
Ms. Alameda?
Yes, for the FICA and the Medicare, is that for a particular staff member?
That's for the attributed to the small stipends that each of the elected officials gets.
Okay. And the telephone? We don't have city paid telephones.
That's the cost attributable to the tablets.
Okay.
Mr. Logan, do you want to, I don't want to be rude and cut anybody off, but do you want to give me the go-ahead when you feel it's appropriate based on reading the hand signals?
Yeah, actually, because this was, Ruth Ann is commanding this. So Ruth Ann, you're going to have to lower the hands once the question has been asked, so I can see it on my end.
Oh, I see.
Thank you.
Okay. So I read that as I should go to the next department, administration.
Yes.
And this department encompasses costs associated with the city administration. Included are the grant support contract and the addition of a part-time intern as a cost-effective means to help implement all the initiatives that are being scheduled or proposed. There are 4 current staff positions. There are expected to be 5. The addition is the part-term intern. One can see that the changes in costs are essentially the new contract for Econ for the grants is going to be about $21,000 more next year than this year, and $34,000 is attributable to getting back to 2019 thresholds. I point out one more because you'll see it in each of the departments that has staffing. The health insurance, we are having some savings as an initiative that's being put in to change from a very expensive divot plan to a very good but not as expensive plan. So there are savings going to be seen in each of the different departments. With that, I'll stop and entertain questions.
Councilwoman Alameen, and you're on mute. Councilwoman Alameen, you're on mute.
Richard, you said that we were in administration because in my book, finance comes after council.
Then I apologize. You should not. Then somehow the pages got out of order, out of sequence. It was supposed to be page 7 for Department 401. So page 7 and page 8.
Do you have it, Councilwoman Alameen?
I do. It's just not in the right sequential order. I do have it. I found it. I'm on it now.
Okay, I apologize for that.
And if you don't, if anyone doesn't have a page, I can send it to you. Just let me know.
So under administration for vacation buyback, who is that for? I thought that was union employees only.
It is. There's one union employee attributed to this department, and that is a receptionist.
Thank you.
Sorry, Mr. Troutman, I just got back on. What page are we on?
I believe for most people it's page 7, page 8, administration.
Okay.
With that, can you lower Councilwoman Alameen's hand, please? Thank you.
I'll take then that to mean to move on to page 9, 10 for most of us. And again, I apologize. Finance. This department includes costs associated with the finance department. A part-time intern is added to assist with the initiatives. For 20 and 21, other expenses are almost all attributable to COVID. What we did was we concentrated all out-of-pocket expenditures to one cost center in the finance department to capture the COVID costs so they weren't spread throughout the budget and we would lose track of them. And the premise obviously is we should not have as many next year. So that's part of what's going on. Here you're going to see the part-time intern. You're going to see the health insurance that was mentioned in the last department as a savings, and largely the COVID savings is the all other. I'll stop for questions.
Councilwoman Alameen?
I just want to make an inquiry about the overtime pay. Who would that be for?
That would be for one individual, and that's the bargain position within finance.
Ruth Ann, can you lower Ms. Alameen's hand? I'm sure her arm is getting very tired. Thank you.
I will move on to page 11, which is legal. This department includes contracted legal services, except for legal related to zoning. 3 collective bargaining agreements exist. The police, which expires at the end of 22, the non-uniform, which extends through the same 22. The fire is in discussion, and it's either 22 or 23 in all likelihood, which is one of the reasons why one would look to the labor reductions. There's a substantial decrease because, frankly, we should be stabilized. And there is still an allowance there because we have a few pension items that we have to structurally fix. If you recall, we had that one pension item for the inconsistency between the bargain units and the third-class city code that has to be sorted out. So that's why there's money still in the budget for that. I'll stop at this point and answer questions. Seeing none, I will move to page 12, Human Resources. This department reflects costs directly related with the Human Resources Director. This position coordinates all employee benefits and business-related insurances and is the contact person for all the employee issues and concerns internally. To be clear, the Human Resource Director also serves as the primary risk management officer for the city. It's one part-time position, and there is very little happening within this department as far as changes go. Questions? Hearing none. Page 13, Information Technology. This department includes contracted services, managing computer hardware and software. There's 2 basic types of services performed. There's a monthly fee for managing the systems, and there's a help desk fee that we pay per ticket that we submit for support. Little expected changes within this category. Stop for questions. Page 14, Engineering. This department includes expenses paid to the civil engineering firm for general engineering consulting, MS4 requirements, and reimbursed road openings where the reimbursements from PA Water and PECO are recorded as revenue. Engineering costs associated with development escrows or infrastructure projects are accounted for in other funds. One implemented initiative is intentionally scheduling the engineering meetings to be more cost effective. Another is to incur MS4 components as mandated, not as suggested, since these are unfunded mandates. That's one of the reasons at this point we have savings projected for the MS4 projects, the engineering services, and all other. Basically, we're trying to be more intentional with how engineering dollars are being incurred. And some of you who have been on some of the engineering calls have seen a different change in how they're scheduled so that it is tighter with their windows. So that's an initiative Mr. Logan's initiated so far, and we're expecting that to carry through in the next year. I'll stop, entertain questions.
Councilwoman Green.
Yes, my question is, the engineering costs seem very reserved, but you said that they're in other section for other things.
Yes.
Now, are we looking to redo this contract or look for a better contract that we're getting from our current engineer, Cedarville?
There's two questions in there, and I'll start with the answer for both of those, and Mr. Logan might have specific comments. Your first part is, you're absolutely right. The bulk of the engineering fees are in the other funds. That's going to be hundreds of thousands of dollars that are incurred, and they're in a different place because they are associated directly with infrastructure projects. What we did last year was put stuff where it could be tracked and is attributable to project management. So we got it out of the general fund. So the general fund really was for the day-to-day operations, not for the projects. So we could have a more consistent, straightforward general fund budget. So to your first point, I would make those comments. To the second point is all of our professional contracts are being looked at a minimum streamlining and being looked at for targeted for being rebid, reworked. They're professional contracts, so they don't necessarily have to be bid, but we're looking at refining our relationships. Mr. Logan?
Well, and that's what I was going to ask for Mr. Logan to speak, because I know he was talking about the fact that, like, on some of these professional services for projects, that instead of, if we can set up the contract, that the engineering cost would be whatever, like they're charging us as opposed to the project. Am I saying that right, Mr. Logan?
Yeah, there is it's almost like a service fee or charge, if you will.
And we're getting them the work
that the city does incur. I would call it soft cost, and it's soft costs that are associated to projects that are either under grants, which most of our projects are. So we are looking at, right now everything is on the table. So we are looking at exploring what options we may have. Cedarville has been with the city of Coatesville for I think more than 12 years now. Have done some excellent work, and we have had the opportunity to go back to the owner of Cedarville to open up the dialogue in this area.
They have done some good work, but they've made some great money.
Yes. Yeah.
A lot of money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I'll take that as moving forward. Next is page 15, which is building and plant. This department is where building-related expenses for City Hall are accumulated, not otherwise attributable to a specific department. For example, utilities for the building and supplies for the restrooms. It does not include costs for the public works or community center buildings, and it does not include departmental supply orders. So each of the departments are held accountable for what they order, but for the restrooms, it's considered a common space cost. We're expecting, a little nuance here is we're expecting to incur the cost to fix the boilers in City Hall this year. So therefore, we're not necessarily expecting to incur sizable costs for repairs next year. And anything over $5,000 would be considered, in all likelihood, a major repair and would be charged to the Capital Reserve Fund as a long-term improvement. I will stop for questions.
Councilwoman Alamy?
Yes, Mr. Troutman, I would really like to discuss the boiler system in City Hall, because if you look at our current accounts payable, almost every month or every 2 months, we have a substantial repair bill for that. So I really think it is time for us to look at replacing that. That system is very, very old. And, you know, if you look at $2,000-3,000 a month times 12 months every month, and you know, that boiler controls even in the newer part of the courthouse, not this last meeting, but the one prior to that, there was something that had to be replaced there. And over the course of a year, we spend quite a bit of money on that system being worked on a regular basis.
If I can add to that, I think, I mean, there are 2 boilers that actually are in question. One's in Public Works, which definitely gets a lot of work, but the 3 boilers that are downstairs, Councilwoman, I don't know how much, I don't think we've had much work done on those. We currently have a work order out to repair, or actually there's a part that's required for one of the boilers. There was a recommendation to replace the boilers. Again, the cost was just not in our budget at this particular time. I was informed by the actual company that we can basically service the one boiler, and that one boiler would take care of the entire building. So, so that's what we're doing right now. We're getting that one boiler serviced, and the other 2 that are out of service, we will address those in the coming years.
Richard, could you please get me the annual fees from 2019 and 2020 that we have paid for the HVAC system in City Hall?
Sure.
Because I know
Yeah, I'll have those.
every month I question the repairs on that system. So could you get me one total with the dates for 2019 and one total with the dates each time it was serviced for 2020? And I do understand, Mr. Logan, that, you know, we are working on a tight budget, but I also understand that the negligence of not keeping up with things over the years, the trucks in Public Works, the building in Public Works, that's how we got to where we're at now. So at some point in time, we're going to have to address these issues because they're not going to get better. They're going to continue to need service.
No, I agree with you. But I just want to be sure what you're asking for air conditioner or HVAC. So the service that's done on the system, the HVAC system, is different than the boiler system. Those are two different systems.
Right. And so I want the cost for both of them because there's been quite a few costs for the boiler and quite a few invoices for the HVAC. And I'm not talking about changing the filters because even if a system is brand new, you have to change the filters twice a year. So I'm not talking about those. I'm talking about when they actually had to come in and do work on the systems. And it's been quite often.
Okay, we'll get those up.
So, yeah, and so for purposes of right now, I pulled up an email that we had documented a little bit of information. As of August 10th, there were 5 major repairs in the last 12 months that totaled $8,000. That does not include those that Ms. Alameen is commenting on that are since August 10th. So it's clearly going up. And my generic comment from a fiscal standpoint would be is there is a cost-effective repair we can do on the boiler on the HVAC system that is almost assuredly will have to be a major project. And my expectation is we would flush out the strategy of fixing or addressing that in the strategic plan, so we would be able to know what year, how to finance it, how to pay for it. But that would be a comprehensive solution we would look at through the 5-year planning process in the next few months into the beginning of next year. So that would be my comments on those topics.
Councilwoman Green, you had a question?
Just a comment for the sake of the audience, the people watching. The public works vehicles, I wouldn't say that they were negligent in how they took care of them. Those vehicles were very old. Most of them were over 15 years old. So I wouldn't say that it was negligence in taking care of them, as opposed to the vehicles were just really old. They had not had new vehicles in a while.
Thank you.
That's it.
Councilwoman Alameen, you have a question?
It's not a question, it's a statement. When I said negligence, I did not mean that our staff was not taking care of the vehicles. I meant that within the budgets throughout the years, it was not budgeted for those vehicles to be replaced. You know how we replace the police vehicles every couple of years? And so when I say negligence, I just mean exactly like what I said in my closing comments. This 5-year plan that you are working on, Mr. Logan, will be the actual first workable 5-year plan. And all I'm saying is, in our plans, we have to incorporate that things get old, things break down, and there comes a point in time when things need to be replaced. I never insinuated. It has nothing to do with our staff in Public Works not, being negligent with the equipment that they have.
Well, yeah, and I wasn't insinuating that you said that. I was clarifying that's why I said from the beginning, I was just clarifying for people who are listening. When you hear the terminology negligence, the budget just was not able to sustain it prior to, so they got the best use out of the vehicles.
Yeah. My comment would be, for everybody's purposes, we absolutely are looking at the comprehensive nature of heavy equipment buildings so that we are looking at deferred maintenance that has built up. We're looking at all that. This budget is intended to do the operating side, to address what we can immediately with cost-effective minimal dollars. Any of the big stuff, we're absolutely going to have a laid out 5-year plan on replacements and when to strategically buy those types of investments. So So, anyway,
So you're in good hands. Is that what you're trying to say, Rich?
yeah, I think so from that standpoint. We might miss something, but we're going to have a plan for everything to have a chance to be caught and to be addressed. So stay tuned. Anything else on that department? Okay, then I will move on to the police. We largely covered. I missed reading the department profile into the record last time. I am going to read it into the profile. It's page 17. The police department is responsible for protecting and serving the public 24 hours a day, every day of the year. Efforts are primarily involved in patrolling and detective work, including training costs and the administration of these efforts. Additional responsibilities include parking enforcement, animal control, assisting with information technology management, and assisting the City Human Resources Department in performing background checks and maintaining records of all employees and key contractors. The staff is responsible for temporary prisoner supervision. Staff also coordinates with county, commonwealth, and federal law enforcement as requested on a reimbursable basis and manage efforts of the constables. Under limited circumstances, the department is also reimbursed for services provided, such as the high school football games. Funds received from governmental agencies, courts, and for parking are recorded as revenue and thus are not included in the expense presentation. These revenues vary annually, averaging about $600,000 a year. The staffing complement is shown below, which we discussed last week. Two factors affecting the sworn officer staffing levels. An April 2012 agreement with the bargaining unit establishes 25 as the minimum. 27 when including the chief and lieutenant. The COPS grant award added in late 2017 committed to maintain existing sworn officer levels through essentially the end of 2021, which is 29 when including the chief and lieutenant. Almost all full-time personnel are members of either the police bargaining unit or ASME. Both agreements end 12/31/22. 16 vehicles are owned by the city to support the 29 sworn officers, with 2 specialty vehicles also owned. These vehicles range in age from 2003 to 2020. They average 2014. Not included are the 3 just placed in service. They average about 69,000 miles, with 2 approaching about 200,000 miles. So that gives a little bit of context about the department. With that, any follow-up questions from last week? I see a couple hands. So,
Yes, Councilperson Graves.
Yes, I'm having a question about what is the minimum requirement of officers on patrol on duty, and is there any way that we can reduce the amount of patrol officers per shift to kind of cut back the budget? And you said we have 27 officers. Does that include full-time and part-time? And is our contract for full-time and part-time?
So there's a lot there, Ms. Graves. So double back if we missed something. I'll answer the last piece, and then the chief should respond to the other pieces. The number of 27, which ties to the COPS grant, is only full-time. Part-time in the police department, there's 4 existing. We're proposing 10. They're not additive. They backfill openings when there's a vacancy due to paid time off that's scheduled. Vacation, military, holiday, those types of things. So it's the full-time complement that I'm speaking to. I'm going to now turn it over to the chief to answer the questions related to staffing complements on a shift basis.
If I might interject, I would much rather the chief not disclose the number of officers in public. If, Chief, you could speak with Councilwoman Graves regarding that information one-on-one, I would appreciate it. And I'm just saying that for safety matters.
Thank you. We did touch on that at the last public meeting, and I did comment that I would prefer not to discuss minimum staffing levels, specific numbers, just for concerns for the level of crime in the city and just issues that might surround giving up that type of information as general public knowledge. The minimum staffing levels are set by the collective bargaining agreement, and they're based upon officer safety concerns, not really the level of patrol that should be provided to the citizens of Coatesville. They are minimum staffing for officer safety only, not really what the city needs to be properly policed. So any change in that would have to come through a collective bargaining agreement. And I don't think it's going to change because they are bare minimums for officer safety concerns and really should not be construed as what the staffing level really is required in the city.
Okay. Thank you, Chief, for that additional information.
And
then,
if I could just interrupt, just briefly, real quick. And I did provide the numbers that are the minimal staffing numbers to Mr. Logan. Perhaps he would speak to whether that was sent out to council in an email, which I believe was the intention.
It was.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was sent out yesterday afternoon.
Okay.
Everyone should receive a copy of that.
Yeah.
So I would just ask council to use that number for their own edification and not share that if that you would mind, just not share that for the general public. Just because I don't think it's really not appropriate information.
Yes, absolutely. That can be kept confidential. I'm just wondering if we can maybe try to reduce activity to reduce costs. I guess I can lower my hand. No.
Oh, I'm sorry. Councilwoman Green?
Yes, I would just, for our hourly receptionists, how many receptionists do we have?
Rich, I don't know if you have that on your report there. It generally fluctuates just like the part-time officers. It just depends on our ability to retain. Right now, I believe there's 10 part-time
Okay.
receptionists that are on the roster. And similar to all of our part-time positions, we have a set number of hours. It's pretty easy to do the math, 24 hours a day times 365 days. That's the number of hours, we fill, and they're just divided up amongst the number of part-time receptionists that we have. So yes, and I think the number is 10 right now. Mrs. Green.
Confirmed.
Yep.
Thank you.
I'll confirm that as 10. Yes.
Yeah, thank you.
Yep.
Councilwoman Alameen, can you see me?
Can hear you, yes.
Oh, but you can't see me?
Pardon me?
I said, can you see me?
I can see you.
Oh, I just want to break a little ice here, ladies and gentlemen. This is for Councilwoman Alameen.
Oh, well, good for you.
Thank you for that commercial program announcement.
You're welcome.
You may resume, Richard.
Thank you. The next pages 19 and 20 are for the fire department. We're going to respectfully ask that we pass over that for tonight. The contract is being negotiated, and so what our projections and estimates could very well change depending on the timing of that. So we're going to hold off on that until another budget session so that we can cover more definitive information at the time. So that leads us to page 21, codes enforcement. This department is primarily responsible for matters related to code compliance and enforcement involving residential and commercial buildings. The staff is also responsible for quality of life issues related to city codes, including administering citywide trash disposal and recycling compliance. Given the cyclical nature and complexity of permit requests, this department oversees the use of professional engineers and inspectors. Capital resources utilized in this department are limited to one pickup truck. There are 3 current employees now. There are projected 4 with the hiring of an additional part-time person. Both of the part-time positions are currently vacant. This is where we will see the large increase in costs that are attributed to the large increase in revenues for the development. And this is where the codes swap out, which is really more comprehensive than just saying code software. But as you heard on Monday night, this is where that change is budgeted. And then you see the changes of savings related to the health care of almost $33,000. You have the swap out by adding an additional part-timer. We get more flexibility. We get a cost savings of per hour compared to our contractor costs. And then there's some other costs that are scheduled out on the sheet. I'll stop here for questions.
Councilwoman Alamy?
Richard, so under other professional service permits, can you please explain why you go all the way back to 2015? The highest year would be 2017. And this is almost 8 times the cost of the highest year.
Yes. Yes, this is directly attributed to the almost $900,000 increase in revenues that we talked about. It's directly linked that all the development permits that are going to be coming at us for all the development that's expected, we're going to essentially pass through that money to our contractors as a cost. So we're going to reflect higher revenue and we're reflecting higher costs.
So this is a tentative figure right now.
Yes, because we don't know when the permits will hit us, and this is all based on the projections of all the development that is in the queue that we've heard about, seen from real estate transfers. Yes, all of that has flowed into revenue and expense. So if for some reason we only get half of it, in theory, our revenue goes to half of what we projected and our expenses go to half of what we projected. If it all comes at once, we could double it. But it's relative and it's linked.
Okay. And can you, the computer services increase, why has that?
That's the singularly attributable to the decision made on Monday to support changing our software.
Okay, but the decision made on Monday, that bill would be paid in 20, not 21.
No, it would be 21. They are starting the process in December with no cost, and the bulk of the work will be done January through April, May, and that's what those costs are attributable to.
Okay, and why is telephone doubling?
Largely because of the tablets and the expectation that the codes people will be out in the field being with remote access. It also would have to do with having more cell phones because we're going to have more professional staff on the street.
So even part of our codes is outsourced. We provide them with cell phones too?
No, the ones that are our primary contractor provides their own phones, and it's embedded in the cost we pay to them.
Okay,
I'm referring to we're adding 2 part-timers.
okay, and
so
two
we-
part-timers would make a phone bill go up a year?
Well, right now we only have 1, so it triples it for effectively. And then we add to that what might be the change in the approach to have more remote access.
Okay, and
So-
why is,
So
go ahead, I'm sorry.
no, so that's why we're just doubling it from 1,400 to 2,800, but it theoretically could be more. It's going to depend on the timing. So, but that's the essence of the answer. It's flexing for the staffing change.
Okay, so I have a comment now and then I have another question. So if these numbers change one way or another, because in some of my questions you say it could change, it could be more, then that would change the overall budget.
Yes, there are certain things here that we frankly have to take our best estimate on for the development, for the permits. We have to take our best estimate on that. And the most important thing with that is, A, to understand we don't know how many permits will show up and when, but we have some source information that gives us parameters of how big different projects are expected to be and when they're expected to be in front of us. And then the second part is our revenues and our expenses are flexed. They're tied to each other. So that part of it, we may or may not have higher or lower, but it will be linked. So our net surplus deficit shouldn't change.
And why is postage changing a large amount too?
Because we have started or expect to start to follow up on delinquents. There has unfortunately been a history of not necessarily following up on delinquents. Frankly, the software's been pretty bad and lack of staffing and et cetera, et cetera. So we really haven't been following up on delinquent unpaid permits or licenses. And it's pretty much a simple math of projecting how many we might have next year, multiplying it by the $4 for registered postage. So we should expect to see that money recouped from collecting funds, which wouldn't show up here. The expense shows up here. The revenue would show up in with the permits actually being collected.
Okay,
Yes,
thank
and
you.
if I can just add to that, and Councilwoman Green, I do see your hand. But if I could just add to that, so one of the things that you all will see, and probably a lot of our departments and categories, are shifts and changes. Rich has done some deep diving into what's been going on. He's been finding things that probably, a number of you didn't even know about. I certainly didn't know about. But we are implementing, systems that we are identifying not only areas where we can improve and be more effective and more efficient in terms of our service deliverables, but also, moving forward, we're putting in place standard practices. That's everything from procurement of our vehicles to, what's going on in our codes department, fee structures, and a lot of what you all do as council members in terms of when we, make decisions on ordinances or real estate. I mean, all of those things factor into, how we are moving about. So some of this may seem a little bit on the high side, or, we're not sure what the numbers should accurately be. These are estimates and projections based on Rich and I really, looking at the numbers and looking at the historical, type of experience the city has had. And I think, and I feel confident that we are on a trajectory that is really starting to level out, where we have a very good, clear understanding of how the city operates and how it should operate moving forward. Councilwoman Green?
I just wanted to make a statement, but Rich kind of clarified it. The purpose of the budget is based on historical, but it's also based on forecasting. So when we have these amounts here, for the revenues coming in from permits and things like that, these are projected. And as he said, if half of them are not done, the expenses correlate right along with them. But at any given time during the course of the year, we can amend the budget if things go south for some reason, but the purpose of the budget is based on history and forecasting, because you can never be exact when it comes to permits and stuff like that. There's not an exact science for that. You base it on history and the projects that we have in the works. So if they do go south, where some of them go, some of them are fulfilled and others are not, the expenses are tied right in there with them too. So if we only do half, we only have half the expense. So I just wanted to clarify, but Rich did a great job of doing it.
I will take this as a time to proceed then to
Yes, I'm sorry.
page 23. No, that's fine, Ms. Green. Page 23, planning and zoning. This department is for accumulating costs attributable to requests for land use changes. The city engages an attorney, parenthetically required to not be the city solicitor, close parenthesis, to support the Citizen Commission. The commission relies on city engineers and other professionals to support the determination process. Amounts paid by parties requesting determinations are accounted for as revenues. So this department, what you'll see here is a larger increase in the engineering and architectural services area. We also have our special legal services here, as mentioned or just discussed. And the reason for the growth in the engineering architectural services, this is a professional judgment that we need to have a larger placeholder of money available, because the presumption is what the Planning Commission is going to get are more complicated, more complex decisions based on all the development coming through. So that's why there is a placeholder put in here. But honestly, I don't know exactly, because I don't know what the residents or the developers might ask for, but it's an allowance for what each decision might need to be addressed. And as one can see, historically, it is 4 times higher than it's been, but it's based off of some brief discussions with people, but everybody is projecting at this point. I'll stop for questions. Seeing no hands, we'll move to Public Works. Page 24. This department includes costs associated with the Public Works Department. Staff are responsible for the following duties as prescribed by city ordinances: park and splash pad maintenance, city street maintenance, which is cleaning, patching, signage, snow removal, trash recycling, includes the bulk pickup, the blight cleanup, the tote distribution, tree trimming, and yard waste pickup as examples. Significant portions of the costs are performed for the benefit of the Liquid Fuels Fund and the Solid Waste Fund. These two funds reimburse the general fund for public work efforts. The department is responsible for several pieces of heavy equipment and commercial vehicles, such as dump trucks, plows, bucket truck, backhoes, for which costs are allocated between Public Works General Fund, which you have here, and the Liquid Fuels Fund, which we will discuss later. There are 5 positions filled now, and there are 5 projected for next year. One of the current year was vacant for a substantial amount of time. So with that, that's why when we look at where the costs are attributable to, the first item, $58,000, is for the large, mostly almost 8 months, I believe, of vacancy that was filled recently. So now we'll have the full year cost next year. And again, you'll see the negative number, which is savings for the health plans. The pension, curious note that the pension charge that's set by the actuaries is lower in Public Works this year. And then we have the fact that the splash pads were not open this year in 2020. We will have the cost to maintain and service them next year. So it looks like we're growing the budget, but we're really going back to 2019 status. I will stop and answer questions.
Oh, we do have a question. Councilwoman Green?
Yes, Mr. Logan, I just wanted to ask, did we change the uniform company for Public Works?
No, we're still using Aramark.
Ms. Green, we renegotiated that contract in the spring, and those invoices are coming in for a savings about, I want to say 10,000 plus for the year.
Yeah. Also, Rich, I just want to make a note. I think you said 5. We have 4 down in Public Works right now.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My phone,
Yeah.
someone was calling.
Yeah, you are correct. There's a part-time
But I heard you,
labor
Rich.
in both years. Yeah, there's a part-time labor in both years that is currently unfilled. So it's 4 and 4, and the budget is for 5 and 5 because of anticipation of having a part-time laborer for seasonal help.
Right.
Thank you for that clarification. Not clarification, correction. Seeing no other questions, we will move to page 26, which is a combination of the recreation, pools, and the parks. These departments reflect direct costs attributable to the almost 24 acres within the 8 main city parks and 2 splash pads. In prior years, it also pertained to the city pools as well. Routine maintenance labor such as cutting grass is accounted for as part of the overall public works budget. However, the pickup, the trailer, and the mowing machine costs are charged to the Parks Department. The infrastructure costs are accounted for in the Capital Reserve Fund. So all the large park projects such as Palmer Park is not in this budget, it's in the special Capital Reserve budget. Within the last roughly decade, about $3 million of major improvements have been made to the parks. Again, this is largely going back to 2019 status, is where the incremental costs are being incurred. We do have to re-up for the splash pad testing and pursue that resolution and do major repairs to both splash pads. With that, I will stop and answer questions. Seeing none, we will move to page 27, which is libraries. This reflects the annual contribution to the library, which has been steady since 2016. I'll stop for questions. Hearing none, we will move forward and go to page 28, which is the community center. This department is used to accumulate costs attributable to the community center, which is permanently closed pending decisions on alternative uses. The building systems were winterized in 2019 and the propane service discontinued. There is an allowance here for next steps of $5,000, and as mentioned last week, there is a pending grant. Neither the revenue from the grant nor the expenditure attributable to the grant is in the budget because it's not definitive. It hasn't, to my knowledge, been secured, so we're leaving it open on that issue. I'll stop here for questions.
Hold on 1 second, I'm sorry. Yes, Ms. Grace?
Yes, so I have a question about the community center. Is there any, now do we need to budget maintenance in case we do get the grants, or should we just look to amend the budget if and when we get the grants?
Well, I'm sorry. You were going out when you asked the first part of your question. Do we need to
budget maintenance costs into the community center project, or do we amend the budget once we get the grants, if and when?
Well, there's 2 ways to look at it. So right now, because it's closed, we're kind of incurring, minimal expenses, electric, water, stuff like that. Moving forward with the grant that is pending, that is designed to do some repair work. The idea or the plan is to get the community center open again and the model will be having various nonprofit organizations serve as the managers of the community center. So they will maintain it in terms of
Okay.
operational. And then based on whatever the funding model will be, and that's up for discussion, those organizations may be contributing to the maintenance side of the building. So there's still a lot of things that we have to work out in terms of the model. The city has a partnership with the Oaksville Memorial Community Center Group. So we are always in talk with them in terms of what the future of the community center is going to be.
Okay. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
With that, I will move to the next section, which is page 29, various catch-all departments. This grouping is not a formal department, but rather general fund expenditures historically separated and tracked separately. So expenses incurred in other major funds generally require a source of money to pay those expenses, which are called transfers to in this grouping. So these are transfers to are those items that we're really paying for as a lump sum reflected here. The debt interest was attributable in 2018 and prior borrowing of tax anticipation notes to provide the city with cash flow. These have not subsequently been required. So in this case, I alluded to or talked about the transfer to capital reserve. Those are for the major infrastructure projects. The reason it's $375,000 is because it's basically zero for the current year. So in 2020, we haven't had these projects because of COVID, so the 3082 became dormant, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why there's such a large incremental increase in that component. And so then that's the major piece of the change. And then there's a placeholder for our for our insurance costs. We won't have our final business insurance costs until at or about the deadline of approving the budget. So our best estimate is a 5% increase. And obviously we hope it comes in less than that, but we don't know. But that is one of those variables. We take our best estimate and put that in for the budget. One other item that is not listed on any of the sheets, but I'll put it in here, is the transit system. We have not had any contributions to the transit systems since 2016, which was a $5,000 amount. So I wanted to make sure that we captured that department as well, based on a question that was posed last week. With that, I will stop and entertain questions.
Mr. Logan, are you calling on folks because you're muted?
Sorry. Councilperson Graves?
Yes. So for transportation, when is the last time we added another bus to our transportation? Because we desperately need to expand transportation. I think this, adding opportunity to travel for a lot of people in Coatesville who we know are on the lower spectrum of income within Chester County, giving folks more opportunity to travel for better jobs and have more reliable transportation, I think would overall improve quality of life for folks. So I think we should seriously consider adding enough in our line item to expand transportation to add a bus that comes every half hour. I think you said it was $70,000.
Right, it's approximately $75,000 to add another bus to the existing route. However, one of the challenges that the city has, the ridership does not warrant another bus at this time. I mean, the ridership is very, very low. And that's why TMAC and craft buses have the schedule that they have right now.
Now,
we do project in the future, as the community continues to build, there may be an opportunity to look at that, but right now they don't really have the ridership.
so can I ask a question? Is it pre-pandemic or is it post-pandemic that the ridership has gone down?
I think it's a little bit of both, because Coatesville never really had a strong ridership in the beginning. And when what we were doing to some degree, and a number of council members that are here tonight, we were actually funding other municipalities and other townships. So where they were benefiting from the bus route, the city of Coatesville really wasn't that much. And we found ourselves paying for services that really weren't being maximized by our residents.
Okay, because generally, I've taken the bus back and forth to work. I haven't because of the pandemic. But while I was on the bus, typically, especially in the morning, like at 8 a.m., 9 a.m., 7 a.m., and then on the way home, the bus was always crowded, every seat full, every, all standing room. People would get rode by because there would be physically no more room on the bus. And I think for a lot of people who rely on going, busing to work, they get into a weird circumstance where the bus has a possibility of making them late to work, or if they miss a bus, they're a whole hour late, rather than being able to make up that time with a half-hour interval. So, I mean, I didn't have the experience of low ridership. So, not.
Yeah, I can certainly get you those numbers, and actually, I think pretty sure you're on the schedule. We are having a discussion with TMAC next week, where we're going to address, the ridership here in Coatesville, as well as, what SEPTA is going to be doing moving forward. Yeah, I mean, those numbers are there. I mean, we can give you the peak hours, and you're right. During the morning hours, you might see a large number of people riding the bus, and then back in the evening, but it's that in between time. So
now, would it be a possibility for us to schedule enough money to add additional buses during peak hours?
Again, if the ridership is there, certainly, I think it would be great, but we would have to do the research, and the city of Coatesville doesn't, capture all of that information. It's TMAC and it's craft, and they certainly, monitor that. And as I said, we have been in discussions with them, not only in looking at expanded services, but now that we have a train station that's coming online, there certainly is going to be a need for increased transportation or improvement of the routes. The other thing that TMAC is looking to do is to ensure that they are getting the actual fares for the ridership, is that they will be going to mobile device use. So for individuals who are riding the buses and they're not showing where the times are or the location of the buses, they are working on bringing that type of technology into their entire system.
Yeah, that sounds great. And maybe even we can look at having a bus that goes to the community college to expand opportunities for education. I'm sure we have to partner with the municipalities that route would go through, but there's a lot of ways we can expand opportunities for our constituents. And we did just spend $50,000 on the software update yesterday, which we desperately needed. And you know, we have to take a look at ridership, but I think we desperately need to expand transportation here.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Councilwoman Green?
Yeah, I just wanted to talk about the bus service. Up until probably 2013, the city would pay on upwards of $90,000 for an additional bus. And then the bus would go to Oxford because of the Tasty Cake plant that was there. It would go to Freedom Village. It would go to the Brandywine Hospital. It would go to the VA. As far as an additional every 30-minute bus, that's pretty much up to Kraft and TMAC. And the problem is that with them, and the reason why they cut out that extra bus, we could not get cooperation from the surrounding communities. They weren't paying. South Coatesville Valley or Callan, the city was footing the bill, and the ridership, the bus would be empty half the time. You know, it might be full in the morning, but after that, there was no ridership. And you know, the money that the city paid is not even half of what is required to maintain that service. You know, but we paid a lot of money, and the ridership just was not there. You know, so, you know, if Kraft is willing to put on an extra bus, I know they did that at one time because that one morning bus, the 7 o'clock bus, I guess it is very crowded. But we're talking a lot of money. We're talking, like I said, we used to pay like 90 grand to provide that extra shuttle. It was called the shuttle, and it would run to the place.
Yeah, we definitely
That the
would
regular
like
bus
to
cannot
have,
go to.
yeah, we would love to have that.
So like I said, when is the call with
part-
TMAC? When is the
Ms.
call
Green-
with TMAC, James?
Ms. Green, you're going in and out. I'm sorry, what?
Oh, I'm sorry. When is the call with TMAC?
Let's see. I have it for.
I would like to be on that call too,
Sure.
because I didn't go to their event this year. Well, I don't even know if they had it, but I went last year, and again, it's about the ridership, just producing the numbers for them to be able to provide the bus service.
Mhm. I was just going to add that, Councilperson Graves, we certainly would love to have that headache of, you know, having crowded buses and things like that. As I said, Tim Phelps with TMAC and Kraft and SEPTA, we were on a call. They are definitely interested in improving services here. So I think additional conversations with them, we can also explore adding buses like that.
Yes, thank you. I think you're right. It's our job to help out with whichever way we can try to do. And right, even if it is at peak hours, that might be the best solution. But let's take a look at the numbers, and I'm looking forward to having the conversation with TMAC.
Right. Let's see. I don't see any other hands up at this time. Rich, are you there?
I am, thank you. I was muted. I apologize. So the
Can I
remainder of
interrupt
that,
you for a second? Mr. Logan, when did you say the TMAC call was? I'm sorry.
I just sent it to everyone again. It is
Okay.
Tuesday at 8:30 a.m.
Okay.
so the remainder of tab 3 are so from pages 30 through the back are the line items for each of the departments at one place. It's just a contiguous listing of all the different line items that were separated by department that we discussed. So I will, for your book purposes, tab 4 is a listing of all the different employees, the positions, the costs, and different columnar add-on costs that get to a net compensation net cost of the positions. Moving forward to tab 5 is our next major stop is to start looking at the individual items. I mentioned earlier, this is new. Last time I mentioned that this is a new section that shows the revenues and the expenses that relate to each other. And so we've talked a little bit about the police last time and referred to this schedule. So I'm going to skip over this as we'll be talking about each of these individual departments either as revenue or have as expenditures. So we've covered the information individually. Next, going to go to. Hello?
We can hear you.
I'm hearing feedback.
Can someone?
All right.
mute themselves?
So I will go to tab 6, which is the next major section. There are 5 budgets that are presented here, and we'll go through each one. And we will, these are the specialty funds that are captured, the revenues and costs are captured separately, individually. They have different, greater significance and weighting. That's why they're segregated. So with that, we'll go to the first one, which is the Grand Prix. The Grand Prix, this fund is dedicated to the Grand Prix event, a series of time car races through the city of Coatesville held every September except 2020. The fund is primarily comprised of donations, entry fees, and expenditures, typo, directly related to holding the event. Revenues and expenses related to this fund are transacted through the dedicated bank account, with the notable exception of payroll-related costs incurred through the general fund on behalf of this fund. In all years 2019 and prior, these payroll costs were not charged to the event, this fund. They were absorbed in the respective operating department budgets. Consistent with the city approach, when one fund subsidizes another, future years will entail charging the Grand Prix for this cost, or these costs. Plans include dedicating proceeds to park and recreation efforts and maintenance of parks, both identified as needing dedicated funding sources in the preliminary strategic planning. So what we have here is essentially a restart of the Grand Prix for 2021. There are very nominal revenues and costs that were incurred in the current year. And so one can see the projections, one can see the contracted services is where the bulk of the expenses are. One can see the $20,000 in for the police costs that heretofore were absorbed in the police department. And now we have a truer cost and revenues attributable to the project. And with that, I will stop for any questions.
Councilwoman Alamy?
Yes, Mr. Troutman, you said about Parks and Rec, so I thought that each year they were supposed to contribute something to Parks and Recs. Why is that not on here?
That is formally now on as part of the, is under contributions. There's a $2,000 line item that is now formally put in.
So the $2,000 goes to Parks and Recs?
Based on the budgeting, yes.
So instead of contributions or somewhere in there, can we actually put Parks and Recs? Because I think there were some years that Parks and Recs did not receive contributions from them.
Jackie, just to clarify, the way that they did it, it didn't go to the Parks and Rec department. It was for Parks and Rec for improvements to the park.
Okay, so Mr. Troutman, again, I'm going to ask, does Parks and Recs, our Parks and Recs department get any money from this event? Because it was my understanding that they were supposed to.
I was just
This
stating that
budget,
because that's how they did it.
Carmen, I'm asking
yeah,
Mr.
the,
Troutman, please.
He wasn't here.
yes. Yeah, so Mr. Logan has asked that it be a specifically identified item, and that cost code 5300 is labeled contributions. We're clearly documenting that they're expected to be transferring $2,000 to the Parks and Recs efforts out of next year's event.
So that means when Parks and Recs has an event or something, like they would sometimes come to the city for some money, they would now have this $2,000 designated for them?
I believe that's the intent. I'm hedging a little because
That's
the standard operating procedure hasn't been written up, and we don't have it clearly written out as to how the mechanics will work. But clearly the intent is, as Mr. Logan just said, yes, that's the intent.
So, Mr.
That's the
Logan,
expectation.
are we going to write that out so that Parks and Recs truly does get the money, and then if they need to purchase something, they have their own funds and don't necessarily have to come to the city and ask for it? How will you write all this out and make sure that they actually get whatever amount of money that they're supposed to get?
In
Well,
terms of,
I think, just let me interject one thing, Mr. Logan, before you say that, because Parks and Rec is not a department. Parks and Rec is a commission. So when they come and they come and they ask for money, we have taken it out, but the allocation from the Grand Prix, and if you're changing that, you're changing that, but the allocation from the Grand Prix, because remember, some of the money went to Ash Park when they were doing some stuff with the courts, with the basketball nets, and the same thing when they were doing it up at the other park in West End with the basketball nets, because that's how the Grand Prix had allocated it. But Parks and Rec is not a department with a budget. They are a commission. So when they buy things, like we bought the screen and we bought the projector, that's city equipment, but we bought it for the use for Parks and Rec. Is that correct, Mr. Logan?
that is correct.
Because they're not a department, they are a commission.
I understand that. Mr. Logan, can you answer the question that I asked, please? Because the question was actually for you.
Right.
Jackie, I wasn't being smart. I was trying to clarify.
So in terms of the allocation of the $2,000, yes. So the idea is to, based on the success of Grand Prix and when they look at, the monies that will be raised, to subsidize some of the work that the Parks and Rec does, the $2,000 will go to the commission from the event to be used for either improvements in the parks or for park-related activities under that commission.
Yeah.
The $2,000 is not the only amount that Parks and Rec actually has, and this is something that Rich and I have to look at again, because there has been in previous years a little bit more than $2,000 allocated, voted on by council members for that commission.
Okay, thank you.
Mhm. Mr. Trotman? Rich, are you still there?
Yes, I am. I've been reading to myself. Thank you. This fund is dedicated to city trash collections, primarily comprised of residential dwellings and a few dumpster permit fees, but not collections of the actual trash in dumpsters. Revenues and expenses related to this fund are primarily transaction through the dedicated bank account, with the notable exception of payroll-related costs incurred through the general fund on behalf of this fund. These costs are accounted through the transfer to general fund expense account. Similarly, when grants provided for capital purchases, a transfer is made to reimburse the capital reserve fund. The intent of this is to be self-sustaining. Major changes, there are no expected fee changes from 2020 to 2021. We expect to be able to use cash reserves to pay the costs related to this fund. We are projecting a deficit to end up happening in 2021. And then we're going to have serious conversations about looking at future years beyond 2021 as to how long the current fee schedule, fee rate at $295 per year can be sustained. There's only so much cash available to subsidize the ongoing rates. There is one major contract that is in this grouping, and that contract has another year that it goes. So with that, I will stop and answer questions.
Good.
Okay, we will move to the next department. Debt service. This fund is dedicated to the debt service repayment of the City Hall renovations ending in November of 2031. 100% of the payments are funded by transfers from the general fund. This fund does not create any money. It just is, for accounting purposes, segregated into this grouping. The slight difference in the account between transferring exactly what we're going to pay out is because that there's a nominal cash balance that's just been carried and unused. So we're going to take advantage of it to save $1,000 out of the general fund this year. Any questions? I'm going to suggest that we skip over capital reserve for right now because this is by far the most complex, dealing with infrastructure, dealing with how much investment the city is going to be comfortable investing. And we'll go to liquid fuels, mindful of being concerned about ending on time. So the liquid fuels budget is, this fund is heavily regulated on what types and to what extent expenses can be charged. It is separately audited by the Commonwealth. Activities are limited to those affecting the public roads, not parking lots. Allowed expenses include road work, salt, patch, storm drains, street lights, not in the parks or buildings, and traffic lights. Salt shed maintenance and some minor other costs are allowed. The city has not utilized funds recently to pave roads, which is a common use, partly given a priority on heavy equipment purchases. The city has generally not appeared to have paving as a priority, which may become utilized as infrastructure funding is further explored. Essentially, the Commonwealth dictates what can and cannot be charged to liquid fuels. We get one payment per year from the Pennsylvania fuel tax. Given the COVID circumstances, the reduction in the price of fuel at the pumps, it means as a percentage, we end up getting less taxes. Therefore, we know for a fact we will be getting 10% less to work with next year in 2021. They are not able to do any projections for 2022 and beyond, but based on the way COVID is going, there is going to be some rebound, but at this point, there will be 2022 will also be impacted. Historically, the city has used funds primarily to buy heavy equipment. There are requirements or regulations on how much you can use for that. So part of what we have to do is take a hiatus in buying equipment so that we can get back into the process and the allowances more adequately. So that might open up an opportunity to look at infrastructure as we do some of the capital improvements. We have to explore how to fund these projects, and we may be able to fund some of them with small dollars coming from liquid fuels. So it ties into the capital improvement budget, mostly on the storm drains and those types of projects that will require opening the roads. I'll stop there and entertain questions. I don't see any hands, so Madam Chair, do you want me to cover the basics on the capital reserve? And then we will be at a very good stopping point and have covered the bulk of the budget and have left over just loose ends for next Monday. Or do you want me to stop here?
That'll be fine.
How
That'll be fine.
long,
Oh,
how
she's back.
long, how much time will it take?
Well, it'll take me 5 minutes to read it into the record, and then the
Okay.
question is going to be, so to the extent that there are no questions, we have a great stopping point. If there are questions, we can pick that up at that point.
Sounds good.
Okay,
Please read it
so
into
so the Capital Reserve Fund, as I've alluded to and mentioned, this is by far the most complex and the biggest change because nothing has happened this year. So the purpose, the Capital Reserve Fund is intended to account for transactions having a long-term nature that are not otherwise required to be accounted for elsewhere, namely the debt service and liquid fuels. Long-term is defined as greater than 1 year and having a value greater than $5,000. A common way to interpret this is where are the fixed assets recorded? Here, including the associated lease transactions that go with those fixed assets. Items qualifying are not limited to things purchased such as computers or vehicles. The more substantial activity includes road work and park projects accounted for as city projects. Major projects managed by the RDA are not included, i.e. the 4th Avenue streetscape, nor paving done by PA Water or PECO after road opening. A few rough tallies for investments, roughly $14 million in road infrastructure, and as I mentioned earlier, $3 million in parks in the last decade, $2 million in vehicles for public works, police, and codes. And as a point of just, because we talked about it earlier tonight, I know my text on the page says 400,000 in one of the later paragraphs. I need to revise that. We started out at a $400,000 investment needed from the general fund to cover all the costs that are projected. That number changed and is not needed. And it's going to be $375,000. So we were able to find $25,000 between the time I wrote the text, and I just forgot to change it. So I apologize for that. And this I want to emphasize on the projects that are expected. We're really talking about essentially only doing what we've committed to in prior years. That includes, for example, the vehicles that we purchased this year and prior years. We have to pay the debt service on those next year and on. There's no new debt service for any vehicles next year. It's just what we committed to this year, last year, the years before, that still is on its payment plan. It also is for the 3082 project. It is for the Palmer Park Phase 2 and 3. It is projects that started last year primarily and are going to be finished or projected to be finished next year. There is virtually no money in this budget for new projects because of the increment that was required, the 375. If we add major projects because we want them done, then we will almost assuredly have to pay additional funds to cover those unless we're able to build it into the costs. And those strategies that Ms. Green alluded to and Mr. Logan spoke to, that we're going to try those things to see what we can do to get more projects done. But this is a very limited scope because there is so much of a backlog or commitments done so far. So I will stop there.
Okay.
There are no hands up.
There are no other budgets to be presented to council other than the one that we have, I'll say, tabled until presumably next week, the fire.
Right.
I turn it over to Mr. Logan and Ms. Lavender Norris.
All right, well, thanks, Rich. Rich, you have done a tremendous job, helping putting together. thanks to your department. Everyone there has done a great job, from Leslie to Jessica to Jackie, who we never see anymore. But thank you all. Also, I just wanted to share with council members, as I mentioned earlier, this budget is something that I think, moving forward, it's going to be, kind of our blueprint and how we manage the city, and understanding all of the nuances, that the city brings to our operations and our functions. And hopefully you all will now see, kind of looking at this budget, all of the different, kind of complexities of how we all are trying to manage it. All of the department heads. We have both chiefs on the line tonight. Thank you guys for being here. We have really, pushed them to the limit. We can only get better at keeping our numbers down. You guys also keep us, kind of in check in terms of, making sure that we are watching our pennies. And, I think we're doing a great job, and we're moving in a very positive direction. So, with that, combined with the confidence that we're continuing to get with our investors coming to the community, they're coming here because they're seeing that Coatesville is rising. I just think that we have a lot of growth ahead of us. In addition to that, the community has come together on different levels. We have some wonderful stakeholders that are working with us, singing our praises. We're all getting on the same page. So if there's one thing I would ask you all to do, is to take this journey with us. Be patient in some of the areas that we ask you to be patient in. Let us share the entire stories to you of how we are arriving at some of our strategic planning. And if you're not sure about certain areas in the department, or why we are doing things a certain way, more than happy to give me a call or email me, or come in and see me, and I'll be more than happy to share with you, as well as the public, what we're doing. And the city of Coatesville is not trying to hide anything. Our residents know what's going on in terms of the various situations, good and bad, that we're experiencing. They are resilient. We are resilient, and together I think we're gonna do quite well in the coming years. So thank you all for being on tonight. Thank you, council members, for your support and for your leadership. And with that, I'll turn it over to our Madam President.
I don't think she is on.
With that, I'll turn it over to our Madam Vice President.
Again, thank you, Mr. Logan, Mr. Troutman. You did a wonderful job of facilitating this budget workshop. I just want to thank all who are watching us on YouTube. Just thank you for tuning in. For those that will watch it later, thank you for tuning in and getting a better understanding of the financial situation of the city and how it's all put together. We're trying really hard to be fiscally responsible. We're trying really hard to provide the necessary services that we need to operate our city. And as Mr. Logan spoke to, Coatesville is rising. We have a lot of projects going on, a lot of new developers that are interested in the city. So things are looking up and things are looking good. We will be back next November 16th, next Monday, I believe that is, for our third workshop, where we will continue with our fire department budget, transition some of the fund balances and things of that nature. So tune in. I just want to say to council, thank each and every one. Everyone's input is just great. That's how we get understanding, by asking the questions and offering suggestions. So I thank you all, Chief and the Fire Chief. I think he's on, Mr. Alderman. We appreciate all your hard work. So everyone have a great night, and we'll see you next week.
Councilwoman Lavender Norris, did she leave completely?
Yeah, well, she's on, but she's not on.
Okay, all right. All right, well, great. With that, I say goodnight to everyone. Thank you.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night, everyone.
Appreciate you. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.